Alan Girard, the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, the Bay's Economy and Ecology.
Here in Maryland, the Bay is very present in our lives, but it's actually 6 states that drain water through the rivers and streams down to the Chesapeake. You know, about 50% of the fresh water that arrives at the Bay comes from just the Susquehanna River alone, the headwaters of which are all the way up in New York State. You know, there's over 11,000 miles of shoreline that make up the Bay. That's the Bay and all the rivers and streams that feed it. So, you know, the Bay is not just the Bay, it's a relationship between all of the land area that drains to it. And what makes that point, you know, particularly important is that the Bay's average depth is only 21 feet. You know, it's well over 100 in what they call the main stem, you know, underneath the Bay Bridge. But on average, pretty shallow water area that's receiving, you know, runoff and pollution from over 64,000 square miles of land area. So, you know, that's part of our challenge is dealing with what happens on the land area in an effective way so we can reduce pollution in the Bay.
So it's an estuary.
It's an estuary, a place where fresh and salt water mix.
And as an estuary, it's the largest in the United States and the 3rd largest in the world, I've read.
It's incredibly diverse. There's over 3,200 species of you know, plants and animals that are in the Chesapeake Bay. And you know, people remember growing up in Maryland and living on the shoreline of the Bay, and the water was clear blue, and you could see the underwater grasses and dip your crab net in. And you know, that's when the rich and diverse ecology and when the plants and animals really were flourishing. Even more so hundreds of years ago. But just in our lifetimes, we've seen a tremendous change. And the opportunity before us is, well, in our lifetimes there's been so much change. Why can't we, over the next several decades, bring the Bay back to that clear blue water that people remember as children in this area?
So we're talking about hydrology now, and the Bay comes from the Susquehanna River and empties into this large estuary that's changing constantly. So some of the widths are, what, 6 miles, and then some are 30-some miles. It's important for many reasons. It's like the agriculture, the water agriculture for Maryland, and what comes from the Bay that makes it so important for us?
Well, you know, people think of, you know, they hear about all those plants and animals that make up the Bay ecosystem. Very important, you know, from an ecological standpoint, but also from an economic standpoint. You think about the way the Bay is an economic engine for the Mid-Atlantic region. You know, just look at the recreational fishery alone. 13,000 jobs supported by recreational fishing, you know, anglers going out and spending the weekend on their boats. Over $1.6 billion of revenue. Commercial fishing, 41,000 jobs in Maryland and Virginia. $1 million in income, $2 million in sales, a billion, excuse me, I got to use the right letter. And you know, these are incredible numbers. You know, and here on the Eastern Shore where this is being taped, you know, the ecotourism, you know, the crab claw in St. Michael's, or the Patriot that takes folks out on the water, Lady Patty out in Tillman, you know, the magnificent catch. You know, all of these industries that are reliant on clean water. I mean, they're dependent on making sure that the economic value is sustained here. And it's really absolutely critical that you know, we keep the health of the Bay alive, not only from an environmental perspective, but also from an economic perspective.
Visit us at greencourses.net.